Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, again to Identity Manager version 7 bits. In this last video out of this very huge series of identity management videos, we want to talk about deep core customizing. First, we will show you some improvements in Object Browser, which is a developer tool, and then we want to step through the API and show you what is new in the API. Now, please follow me to the screen and have fun with that video. I think everybody knows the Object Browser. It is the hidden tool we always use in a project development and should not be used just for data administration or from the customer side. The Object Browser itself works more or less like before, but there are a few very new and very nice features I want to show you, and they have to do a little bit with the API, and so it is part of the API session. First of all, a new implemented functionality. It's a filter in the Object Browser. In the past, when I was, for example, searching for the table dialog scripts, what was necessary to do was just to step here to the navigation and then to type dialog scripts. And because it's a long word, it was not so hard to do. So dialog was typically typed, and then I started searching here, for example, for dialog scripts. People are able a little bit better to type. May type a little bit longer words, so dialog scripts, and after some seconds of searching I was here just able to get these dialog scripts displayed. Here they are. Another way to do it, it's now in the Object Browser implemented, and it replaces this type by search thing here. So I step to the database menu, open configuration, there is the keyboard handling, and you see key look ahead. And key look ahead is exactly what I have done, just typing, and it jumps more or less to the table. I select here instead of this now filter, say OK, and after the system recognizes that there was something modified, I type, for example, script. And what happens now is a small filter jumps in, and that small filter here shows me, for example, the dialog scripts. From my perspective, this is much smaller than before. Only thing you have to know is that if you use that feature, you have to type just in one session. That means you cannot stop typing, wait a second and restart typing again, because if you do that, for example, I want to type in now script person, so I type now person. You can see what happens. Okay, person was not correctly typed, but it just replaces the old search filter you have typed before. I think that is a pretty nice feature and very needful to help you navigating through the jungle of tables. And it is a feature that is born more for people who know a little bit better the data model than beginners. Beginners, I should think, should start with the default, and the default is I see the complete data model on the left side. A second feature is how to display values. I want to show you that as well. So I type, for example, dialog script again, or let me say better script. So here are the dialog scripts, and I search for script. And if I now want to see the script code, in the past it was quite easy just by clicking in there and getting the functionality like this. But unfortunately, this only works for customized scripts. Yeah? And I get that editor here because I opened the CCC import locality, which is a custom script. So closing that and stepping to one of the standard scripts, for example, dpr, get dpr, and so on, and I click in that field again, you can see I'm not able to get these three dots here, and I'm not able to get the script text out of this. But sometimes it's necessary to copy the script, for example, to an editor or something like that. And it must be possible to do that. And the way to do it is I just open the complete section script code here. I step to value. And value shows the three dots. I cannot change the script because it is completely great, but what I can do, I can just select everything and copy it out of the box. This is the way now with a new functionality to get script code out of locked objects. And objects are locked if these are standard objects. If these are customized objects, like for example the script here, I don't need that. I can do it as well if I want to, but for customized object, the lock is already rejected and I can access directly the column. A very nice feature as well is to show the relations, and I want to show you that on a person object. So I jump here into my navigation and type person. My new filter shows me the person table. Here we are. I just select one of my people here. I do that, for example, for Tineke Zook. She is one I know with many relations to AE roles. Here we are. And now from the property grid section, I jump to something that is named relations. And if I open relations, you can see, for example, many base tree assignments here to person, which is because we have that many role assignments. And if I go into that a little bit deeper, you will see here as well person in base tree entries, and I can just open that if I want to do this. And then you see all the assignments here to that specific object. And if you want to navigate to one of these entries, for example, here to the manager entry, then you can right click that entry and say, go to the selected object, and you are now directly here on that specific object, which was a role named managers. Very nice feature as well. And the last thing I want to show you is as well an important feature. You may have seen here these very nice and tiny icons, and these icons are only a small selection of what is possible. We don't display too many of these icons because that's sometimes a little bit overwhelming, but for experts it is often nice to see a little bit more about a column, just looking on the column without opening here the detail section and figure out what is exactly configured. And there is a specific action over here that allows us, first of all, to see all the icons and what the expression is on the right side. And secondly, I can just turn on all of these icons, and doing that, I'm just able to see many more icons. That's not so important here on that specific relation, but if I step back to person objects, for example, you can see here many icons. For example, here now it's a new icon that says this is a multi-language properties, and from time to time these icons have as well functionality. So clicking on that icon, I get, for example, the translation form and so on. And that helps at the end a lot, just to identify different specific properties like mandatory fields, like locked fields, fields with multi-language icon, system locked fields, and so on and so on. This is often helpful and as well a very nice feature in the object browser. In the next step, we want to talk about the API in Identity Manager version 7. And to do that, I want to show you a small sample script. I'm here in Visual Studio. At the end, I loaded the system debugger solution, which is part of the product. And doing so, I can download all my scripts or write some new scripts. I have written a new script. You can see that because the name and the ID of the script is just the name of the script. And now I start doing some code. I don't want to type all of these. I just want to explain that. For that small session, that should work. First difference to version 6 is that before we have used something that was named connection object. This connection object now exists as every of these other ways as well, which means the complete old API is included in the complete new API. Only if you use the old API in the future, you will get not in that position that you can use all of these performance increasements we have made with the new API. So back to the new API, I create here a variable called source, and this variable source is a session source object. Session, it's the new connection object, which is as well very suitable with the application server and which can use bulk operations, what the old API not can do. I can as well use a connection object if you like, but session source is the new way to do something. In the next step, I create something that is a person object. And this is pretty new in Identity Manager 7 as well, because I create that person object out of the source, which was created before, as a new object of type person. This allows me now to step down where the person object is handled, for example here, and to say I want now to configure, for example, the central account of this person object. So I put in a line, hit on the dot and get now a pre-selection of all existing columns, which is now named type wrapper. That means we can now select the columns from the list. Remember, in version 6 it was necessary to put them in a get value or a put value and to know exactly how the column name was. So I can now say this is here my central account, for example. And then I can add a value to that. For example, Marcus WE could be a good idea. And this is now part of my specific object. In the future, I will here put in some more values, especially because I have to write that object at the end. The same thing could be done with, for example, an Active Directory user object, which is defined here. It is the same command source create of Active Directory account, but this time I write something in these brackets after the type. And this is something we call the entity creation type. And the entity creation type will have impact on how these objects will be handled. What is meant behind that? Remember, in version 6, if we was just adding some values to a specific object, with any value we added, the templates were starting again and calculating something. This is something that was slowing down the system, especially because with every property, template was recalculated. And that was the truth for any template working on the whole object. Now, per default, there is something configured we name the delayed logic. And the delayed logic just will turn off templates during the object creation. That means here in that section where I put all the values in, no template gets triggered. The template itself gets triggered later on when I put that object into a stored unit of work to store it, which is here. I define here a session stored unit of work. And in this stored unit of work, I put in that specific object and the other object to store it then, if I execute that commit here, into the database. What is meant by that stored unit of work? This is another feature. This feature allows me to store the complete object into the database, to do that and to do that just in one database connection. That means the database connection is opened. All these objects here in the stored unit of work gets handled and written into the database if I execute that commit here. And then the database connection is closed. This is a big improvement to version 6 because in version 6, any single object was always written in a new connection. That means I was opening the database connection, inserting an object, closing the connection, and do the same again for the next object. Now, with that, I can do bulk operations, and bulk operations will speed up the single object behavior incredibly. Please note, the stored unit of work, it's not a replacement for something we name the database transaction. If you need something like a database transaction, then you can define that and wrap it around the stored unit of work, which means you will have a begin transaction at the begin, then session stored unit of work, as we see them here on the screen, and later on you can close with a commit transaction or a rollback transaction or whatever you need in that case. So again, stored unit of work, it's not a transaction, it is additionally to that, it allows bulk operations. Back to my scenario here on the top, we don't have only the specific one delayed logic. In addition to the creation type delayed logic exists the creation type interactive, and the creation type interactive will activate the same template handling as we know them from the past. That means with every value we add here to our person objects, our templates gets recalculated. A third exists as well, which is the value default. And the value default is the same than delayed logic. It is taken if you don't configure something like we see that here. Last but not least, I want to show you how to get a collection object out of the database. And the first message here is, in difference to version 6, the new collection objects are now collection objects where you can work with in a way that you can modify data. Remember, in version 6, it was not possible to do that. It was every time necessary to create single objects out of a collection objects if you was on the way to modify something. Now, in version 7, you can do that directly with a collection object. This is my last example. Therefore, I have created a new variable departments, and these variable departments, it's born out of the source object with get collection and of type department to get the type wrappers. In difference to version 6, where I have to start now with prototyping, I can directly define SQL queries and whatever else after the bracket here, query.from department, as that means I want to query something out of the department container. To show you how a where clause works, I have just used the where clause here. The condition here is already rubbish, but at the end it will load every of these departments. I can as well order the complete collection, for example, using the full path, and then I have to tell the system get query. And after this is done, I can define here something that is called the entity collection load type. Here I use the load type bulk. What is that? Collection load type bulk allows me to load the complete properties in all the entries of that specific collection. That is more or less a collection of complete objects of my records I want to load out of the database. In difference to bulk exists something like slim, which does not load anything beside the primary key. That is a very small collection. There is a bulk read-only that loads everything, but as read-only, which is something that represents the collection you know out of version 6.x. I can as well define with the help of .select my display items. And if I configure nothing, I will get a standard collection which loads the primary keys, the standardly configured displays for my object. So once I have the stuff loaded, I have to handle my collection. I can do that, for example, in a for each. That is what we have done in the past as well. And if I want to handle, that means to store objects, I have to make sure that this happens in my stored unit of work. That means if I have that using stored unit of work here to write something later on into the database, I have to type in the for each here. And you see that for each, that is my department entry, and it is one of type department, that is to get my type wrappers in the collection I have defined, departments. Then I can do the following. I can say for the entry set, for example, custom property 1, 2 flagged. Makes no sense here, but it is a change for any department I've loaded out of the database. Then I can put that as well into the department entry. Here we are. And if this is done and all my departments are edited here to the stored unit of work, later on, as you have seen, we will have the commit and everything it's written into one bulk operation back into the database. From my perspective, this should be enough now for you to understand a little bit how the new API works. And the good message is with version 7 or shortly after, we will get as well the new SDK, and the new SDK will show us many more samples how to use this very nice new API. With that, I want to close that session and have fun now with Identity Manager 7.